My friends, welcome to your seat table. I'm Rick, and we are looking at gosh, a Shadowrun source book for Aztlan, Aztlan. I cannot pronounce it, save my damn soul. I know what it sounds like in my head, but anyway, this is a major source book, and in one aspect, it is a great introduction for a whole realm of bad guys for your player characters. That is not to say that the nation state that becomes Aztlan is necessarily evil, but there's a lot of dark stuff that goes on down there, and more so than in other locations. In part because of their belief in use of blood magic. So when the Seattle Sourcebook came out, for the early first couple of years, it's pretty much all we had to run from. That and the Native American states that were in the vicinity of Seattle. And then we started seeing the introductions of like the London Sourcebook and the Germany Sourcebook and things like this. When it expanded our play box, our sandbox got much bigger. And so when we look at this one, it's an interesting conundrum because most of Mexico and the peninsula down there, leaning towards Colombia, have become part of this Aztlan, and it's kind of based on the Maya, Inca kind of stuff, and there's a whole slew of questionable stuff by today's standards in here, and you have to use it with a level of civility and adult mindset when it comes to, you know, based on what we have today as being acceptable behaviors and not acceptable behaviors. I mean, I'm not. It's one of the things because you can almost make an argument this whole source book is racist in some ways because it really portrays South America, specifically the Mexican part of it, as being a real shit show, and part because of the heavy chemical, you know, environmental problems. You have to wear a breathing mask outside or you're in trouble. That's how, if you're in the cities, you absolutely have to wear a breathing mask. And then there's the use of blood magic, which is literal blood sacrifices, which it's recommended heavily in here that is not something you allow the players to have access to. They themselves should not be participating or practicing blood magic. And if you've played enough tables with enough people, you will know sooner or later you will find that one person who thinks that's the thing they want to do. And it can be pretty dark. It can get pretty dark. So Nigel Deep and Findley, all right, dedicated to the memory of this fellow because he passed away in 1995. That's probably about the year that this came out. So this was his last work. Aztec Corporation, introduction inside the Civil War, the history, their glorious history, tactical briefs, and Aztechnology. So to talk about Aztechnology and Aslan, it's kind of basically two sides of the same coin. One doesn't exist without the other. In a lot of ways, the country is subservient to the corporation. And they do make some efforts to make it look like it's not true, but the reality is that there's a lot of places where it's hard to tell when the nation stops and the corporation starts, and vice versa. There's that much intermingling among them. And so we have Aztechnology, the history, Aztechnology into excellent government, corporate structure, business practices, corporate security, corporate and national military. Once again, the military, same scenario. It's sometimes hard to recognize when the nation ends and the corporation starts, and vice versa. So there's a lot of connectivity between the corporation's security arm and the military organizations for the country itself. And that's by design on purpose. Then we have a whole section for religion and magic, fast facts, borders, the Panama Canal. And we got getting in, living in Aztlan, Tenochtitlan, the city of the court, the capital city, Mexico City, yet changes yet an M. Yeah. So, what do you think, America? Do you think that these fine folks would have changed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of Aztlan? Eh? 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 Would they have liked it? Other people complain. Is it stupid? Gulf of America. Jesus. Hubris. Hubris in full display. Introduction. Welcome to Aztlan, Nation of Contrast. Starring on wealth and crushing poverty, sophisticated technology, and rampant superstition, magic, and mayhem. Aztlan Sourcebook is a supplement to the Shadowrun game system. Sourcebook offers game master players detailed information about the mysterious nation of Aztlan and the corporation that controls the nation. Aztechnology. Aztlan will provide game masters with enough basic information to create adventures, etc., etc. Right? Inside the big A. In today's world of high tech and higher expectations, even top executives cannot win the big prize by just getting the job done. To get the gold ring, you got to do the job in style. This accent holds true when negotiating a social merger over a pint of pure brewed ale at the Nagas Brew Pub as it does for facing down a hostile board of directors. Everything about today's up and comers has to convey a personal style, the right style, whatever. And so we get to welcome to the secret treehouse. Yeah. All right. This is something interesting about this book because the book was presented in two parts from how you want to look at it. One perspective was this released uh, biography of the nation and the corporation. In a lot of ways, it was heavily redacted and altered by the very corporation and country that it's supposed to highlight. And so a cleaner version or an accurate version was released to the internet through a third party, and it had to be protected heavily to avoid being torn down, hunted down, and completely rewritten. And then in the pages, we have this meeting going on between a bunch of these very important people, although most of us, unless you know who these are relation to directly, it's hard to say. And a couple of these are dragons, without doubt. The big D, for example, I know for a fact he's a dragon, and they don't ask me to pronounce his name because I can see it, but for the love of God, I can't pronounce it. And I've noticed that a lot of these big source books for these regional source books, that's the thing. So Germany, especially Berlin, is controlled by a dragon, indirectly, directly, very powerful individual. Apparently, there's feathered serpents flying around in Aztlan, which and the upper levels Aztechnology, which implied once again more dragons. And then we know there's a dragon in charge of Denver, and because I got another book I've been working on reading through on that one, and I don't know that there's one in Seattle. There is one in Seattle, but he's not quite as powerful or as dominant, I guess, how you want to look at it, or he chose not to be. Goes in there. There's some parallels to it. It's definitely worth reading this interaction between these upper yahoos, the Civil War. Right? Yeah, it goes on about how the country went from Mexico to Aztlan and how they acquired parts of the peninsula, or most of it. Right? You can see the additional redactions where it was showed that the corporation got in here, didn't like it, and tried to alter a bunch of stuff, and then this is re-put out with this changes, unredacted kind of stuff. You know, there's also the civil war that's going on within Aztlan. There are several elements that are in conflict against the leadership of both the corporation and the country itself, and that in and of itself causes plenty of heat within the border. And yet, the Civil War, excuse me, is pretty well within its border. It's complicated without a doubt, as they usually are. So we get a little bit of a picture. Most of this area, you know, including this piece, but most of this all the way down to Colombia border. So Yucatan Peninsula, circa 1995. Right. Introductory brief of Operation Libertad, Zone Ghost, Zone Lagos, Zone Cathedral. History. We always have entries from different, internet hackers or whatever. Captain Chaos wrote the introduction. Our glorious heritage, the history, like any modern day, including America, our history is subject to whoever decides to try to rewrite crap. And we're seeing some of that in a very, very, right before our very eyes these days. And we're oblivious to it, or we're ignorant of it, or we're just stupid as all get out because we're failing to see how we're losing everything to a handful of billionaires. Yes, what you want? Yes, and you come back to see some help. Right, and just don't step on the book because I don't want you getting on it and having an incident. Okay. No, you're not getting on a book. Yes, yes. I know there's not what. I know. Can we not get on the book? Come on. I don't want you bleeding on it by accident. Yes, go back over there. Some more birds. I heard them. Era of expansion. More of their history. Aries macro technology. Technical brief of Inseta and Veracruz. Overruled. Operation Reciprocate. Pan. Yeah. See, so at one point they decided it wasn't enough to it was just easier to control some of their neighboring countries as well, so they kept expanding to a limit, and then they get to up against Colombia and South America, and then they start having conflict. So they have intermarried wars along that border down there, and it's not clear in here whether or not they have designs on the rest of South America or it's just a conflict of interest. Yes. See, then we got Aztechnology. The Aztechnology Corporation. Like nation states, the worldview and behaviors of mega corporations are strongly influenced by the path by which they reach their preeminence in the business commercial world. This is particularly true of Aztechnology Corporation, though the name Aztechnology does not appear until 2020. The history of the Aztechnology Corporation dates back well before the awakening. Cartels. Aztechnology began within the various drug cartels that operated largely out of Colombia and later Panama and Nicaragua in the late 20th century. The cartels were involved in various business concerns from the 70s through the 90s, then once more around the turn of the century after a temporary downturn in their business fortunes. The Medellin cartel led the group during the 1980s, giving way to the Cali cartel in the 90s. After Cali cartel's influence diminished as a result of various factors, the Medellin faction regained ascendancy. They said in the preceding paragraph, the word faction is used advisedly, although the cartels occasionally work together, as in their response to an enhanced war on drugs staged by the United States in the late 90s. They spent more of their time in direct and often violent competition with each other, which sounds like the megacorps today and inspires Larkspur. Yeah. During the early years of the 21st century, the Cali cartel regained some of its lost power. It failed to overtake the rapidly growing Medellin concern. Two major cartels had also written promises on the intern, one based in Malaysia, a Messiah, Nicaragua, and the other in David, Panama, near the Costa Rican border. Right. Hey, Mama. Yeah. Oral and technology, third things of the oral. No, you can't sip on this stuff. Get off get off the book. You can't sit on a book. I'm not having you pee on it. I'm not having you get blood on it. I know, but I don't want you on I'm sorry. You will literally bogart the entire time you're in here. Yes. Mm-mm. Well, yes, I know. Yes. You can't stick your head in my mouth. Come on. Yes, I know. Right. corporate conflict, obviously corporations inside various corporations. A lot of them have a very negative interaction with the Aztechnology. Aztechnology, even the early days of the Seattle source book, was one of the not the bad guy. It developed into a bigger bad guy over time because you were dealing with several Japanese corporations and stuff that were or Neo-Asian corporations that were in dominance of that and were uh, conflicting with them or at least competing with them directly to be a problem. So there was more than one thing about Seattle. There is a lot more diverse groups of corporations that are they're vying for each other's you know, niches and things like that. So we get techniques to control, technical means, economic means, indirect and direct personal means. Yes, as technology is relatively high proportion of magically adept employees makes direct personal control a particularly attractive choice for the corporation. The most common form of direct personal control is mind controlling spells. If used correctly, it quickly become quickened to become part of the subject's aura. These spells can be hard to detect and even harder to counteract. Forms of brainwashing and non-magical behavior modification techniques refer to the file cross-reference. Manchurian candidate also is effective, although they tend to take longer to bring into play. Some tentative evidence exists that certain forms of spirits can directly control, even possess an individual. For obvious reasons, such spirits would make a powerful tool for controlling a politician. And we make this the I Ching. He says, blood spirits, chummer. Them things can possess you, rip your soul out through your ears, and wear your body like a fragrant suit of clothes. All right, to give you an idea of what they're talking about. And there's a lot of spirits, lot more than average going on down there in former Mexico. Yes, but we just want to play now. Oh, what? Yeah. Well, now you don't want to play? Okay. What? Did I bump your tooth? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yes. I know. You don't get enough attention. Well, we can't let you out there with the other kitties because they're mean to you. And you'll hide under the couch and mom will have a canary. Yes. Yes. And that's the truth. Other cats are mean to her and we never understood what the reason for it was. To Aztechnology, their management structure, senior management team. You shouldn't leave us any spots behind. The Chief Operational Officer, CFO, CIO, Senior Executive, Vice President, Corp Politics, Board of Directors, the Dragon. The Dragon. Persistent rumors push this one to the top of the heap. Dragon's allegedly a great feathered serpent, and by some accounts female, but little else is known. Few people have reported the occasional sightings of larger than standard feathered serpents arriving or departing from the main Aztechnology pyramid, but nothing verifiable. Then we get a comment from Dingbat. Come on, there's got to be some kind of leak. No company is that tight. And then a reply, the Pyramid Watcher. The upper ranks at Aztechnology are. We assume that the senior managers who know who's on the board of directors, but are we safe in making that assumption? They may be in the dark as much as we are. All right. There we got Thomas Roxbarrow. The old Roxy's an interesting case study. Some dude, whatever. Yeah. You got a guy that's basically parts living in a machine now. That shows you some of the level of crazy that goes on down there. And he's still part of their board of directors or something. And if that's true, you get various rumors and things like that going on in here. Common rumor number 5. A single individual, metahuman or otherwise, runs the whole Aztechnology organization. According to the most readings of this rumor, the entire board of directors and the management team are puppets, not just the poor Azcapotzalcoatl. Jesus. Talk about a mouth twister name. Well, maybe, like I said above, the tentative evidence implies that Aztechnology shows more unity of purpose and action than most other corps. So you can understand what I'm yammering about. Here's a little background, right? Now, since they're not quite sure exactly how Aztechnology is run, but and thus Aztlan is controlled. But there's definitely many layers going on here, and not everybody's in the most people are left in the dark on purpose. Then we have key industry segments, expansion and acquisition and competitive practices, intercorporate relationships, recruiting, magical security, corporate national military. She's like, the nation of Aztlan has only about 50,000 or so people under arms. But if you've been paying attention to the real world, you know there's more than manning the thin ochre line around Austin. Guess where the others come from? Aztechnology. The Corp has its own military organization, its own chain of command, its own table of organization and equipment, has close to 150,000 people under arms, although both forces put on a show of being independent entities. Here I want to tell you about that crock. The true Jin, the Aussie military, both sides will kill you at the end of the line, end of story. That's what they do, kill people, and they're bragging good at it. Chummers, you might think you're pretty bitchin' direct with all your heavy security armor and your Spaz 22 combat shotgun, or maybe your Panther salt cannon. In your own back alley, you might be pretty bragging bitchin'. You can turn go-gangers into cat chow before they can even register your presence. You can cap your typical corporate security force without much trouble. You're king of the bragging hill, but only until you get out there and mixed up with real military. See, military doesn't come in ones and twos like you and your sec guard buddies. They come in fire teams and squads and platoons. They wear armor that'll give you wet dreams, and most times sporting full tactical data net support. Pack weapons you've never even seen before, and military folks know how to use their little toys. Alone in the combine arms operations and using tactical doctrine that'll leave you shaking your head in confusion in the milliseconds before you die. Even mercs like me don't go toe to toe against a full on military. Even if we have to deal with them at all, we do it at long range from heavy cover and from the back while they've got something else distracting them. Then we run fast. Then it gives a bunch of commentary and stuff, which is the way it should be played out in my mind. And as we get equipment, major bases, organizations, battle forces, ground forces, naval forces. Aztlan has a frigate navy. It doesn't maintain aircraft carriers, strategic missile subs, or large battleships. Okay, it does have a bunch of frigates, destroyers, and patrol boats, and even a couple fast attack subs. But they're more about protecting their own borders than projecting power across the ocean, because that's not what they're into. The Air Force applies a similar scenario. Space forces. Says Aztlan does not have any national military space assets. None. No spy sats, no kill sats, no FOBS birds, no Thor bundles. It doesn't have to. Aztechnology more than picks up the slack in that area. Military intelligence, human intelligence operatives, other intelligence gathering assets, and then the warriors. Another thing about the Aztlan military is that they have several military warrior orders within them, and each one is correspondingly more effective. It's a good word, and you don't want to play with them. And these are like one of these is an ultimate bad guy for many scenarios. So we've got the Puma warriors, and we have what. Yeah, so increasingly jam. Or they're a rough order of increasing jam. The Jaguars, the Eagle, the Orton, and the Kanash or Canuck Quacic. Kanich? Kanash? Kanich. Or shorn ones. Despite the name that the last group, the only some of the members go for the shaved head and braid look. It's not obligatory. Right? Each one more potent than the last. Each organization more damaging. Religion and magic. There's a lot of combinations going on. So you get temples in every town and village, deities, the priesthood, the emperor, rank and file clergy, magically active priests, forms of worship, petitioner deities, path of the sun, sacrifices. Yeah, somewhere in here it tells you there's the GM it's a bad idea to let players involve themselves in this sort of stuff. Yeah, so sacrifice lies at the heart of the Aztec religion, ancient and modern. Worshippers of the ancient Aztec gods often sacrifice items of personal or voluntary value, even their own blood, to the deities. Priests sacrificed humans, usually captives taken in battle, to supply the blood and hearts required to nourish the sun and keep shining. Yeah, see, that's the fifth time she's ran down to the cat box in the past hour. And she's a little spot. So she goes down, she has to pee, her body's telling her she needs to pee, and it's just a little amount coming out. And like I said, it's tinged with blood. You know, we saved her from being outside. She was not to live through that winter. She was in a very rough shape when she came here, and it took us a couple of years just to get her where she would let us even, handle her very much. And now it's been 4 years now. She lived a lot longer than she would have outside. But I told the wife, I says, you know, if she lives out the year, every morning I come in here, I kind of expect to find her either half out of it or down on the floor. It changed me a little bit that I just don't have that kind of resources to give her the health care, the Medicare, the medical care she needs. I'm struggling to have health care for myself. Not to, never mind. It is what it is. Uh, Religion and magic, belief in demons, the spirits, once again. Spirits play a big role in this region. Says the interesting aspect as on state religion is apparent belief in demons, specifically in a creature known as the Tisman or demons of twilight. To understand the significance of these demons, one must know a little more about the Aztec calendar. Hey, let's go into that in detail. But I know that the people that are talking to their overview and all this stuff, they have this concern that there's more going on in the magic, especially blood magic, than what's being let on, and then they themselves are being secretive as well. So there's a lot that they're not saying, and that there's some beliefs that some of this blood magic goes beyond the pale and can be catastrophic in nature to the world at large. And that is something that apparently happened in ancient times that nobody talks about or very few people know about. And they're concerned about the possibilities of some people and delving too deep into things they have no business with. And then we have a whole other subchapter on the Catholic Church in Aztlan, because the Catholic religion is extremely well entrenched in South and Central America, and it continues to that level today. And they're obviously in conflict against a lot of the local gods and their beliefs and the beliefs in them. And then they also include the New Society of Jesus, or Jesus. And these people are no joke either. They got some pretty potent forces that are involved. There's a lot of under the table, under the board stuff going on in various sub-regions of the country. And the closer you get to the Amazon jungle, the worse it gets. So the closer you get to the equator, the more the rebel groups are in charge of stuff. That'd be my understanding. Some great artwork here, right? Thomas Roxborough, circa 2055, and living in a bubble, literally living in a tank, staying alive that way. An Oten warrior prepares to cast a spell using blood magic, blood sacrifice. Everybody's wearing face masks. The damn pollution will kill you. Then we have a priest of Exkinticontial, I can never pronounce these words, summons a blood spirit. The shaman Quasitukapol, the plumed serpent. And I know, the sad part is I've read and I've listened to plenty of YouTube videos over the years that the people properly pronouncing these words that I'm butchering something fierce. So Aztlan magic, the totems, mama, blood magic. All right. Yes. Blood spirits. Yeah, this is what we're talking about. This is an implication of an actual sacrifice about to take place. Yes. The fovea are blind spots in the magic. Past facts. Past facts. Right. The borders, Panama Canal, from ocean to one ocean to the other, elevators in the water. Talk about Panama still. History of the canal, the zone, good times and bad times, past facts, country at a glance, urban rural population breakdown, cultural groups. Yes. You looking at me for? You looking at my hand? Aren't you looking at my hand for? Can't you? Yeah, right there. Yeah. Oh, I know, I know. Just stay off the books. I don't want you looking on the book. Yeah. All right. Topography, getting in, getting out. Not so easy to get in and out of here. Probably easier to get out than just to get in, ironically. Unless they don't want you to leave. Citizenship, travel by land, unscheduled flights, air insertion, travel by sea. Yeah, we're going to parachute into the country. Cross country insertion, cruise ships, southern border, as Abazodia, direct insertion, covert air and sea insertion, analysts and recommendations. Living in Aztlan. Chummers, the Aztlan Corporation has lived the life of Riley. Believe it. The center of Mexico City is a enclave, and it's a brag of a nice place to spend some time if you belong there. Complex. Needless to say, most suits live in the same urban complex you see in downtown Seattle. Not quite arcologies, but pretty close. There's only one true arcology worthy of the name, the Aztechnology Pyramid, right on the Paso de la Reforma, about 2 clicks from the old National Palace. They ain't fully self-sufficient, but not far from it. If you live in one of these complexes, locals call them castillos or alcazars, castles. You pretty much never have to leave, which is bragging lucky for you, considering that the streets are like. You think Seattle's bad with constant rain, so acidic that it stings your eyes when it falls, where all the buildings are turning gray from the smog. The plastic is dissolving by the microcentimeters because the direct that's always dripping on it. Chalmers compared it to Tenochtitlan. Seattle's a garden wrecking Eden. Everyone here wears a breather whenever they have to step outside, even if it's only for 30 seconds. Everyone. They wear their filter masks so often they make them part of each day's outfit. And I'm not talking pseudo designer Peloni med breathers here. I'm talking intricate, personalized decorations, paint, enamel, dainty filigree work, beads on occasion. They'd be gorgeous to look at if you forget why people have to wear that. I once saw a baby wearing one. Its mother had trimmed the thing with lace and little silk rosebuds to go with the little darling's bonnet and bunting. Somebody probably gave it to her as a shower gift. Made me want to cry. Anyway, almost everything you might need or want is inside the Castillo. Restaurants, medical centers, daycare, zoos, uh, for the Rugrats, theaters, live and semi-censored tree video, fitness clubs, bars, even comfort stations to ease the biological back pressure of all genders. If you're a resident of to a Castillo, you don't have to pay for anything directly. You don't even have to slot a stick to buy dinner. You just thumbprint the scanner. Everything gets charged to your residential account. Yeah, that's what I want. Everybody just accessing my what little I got. Standard working times. What is this? The Burka Berkaman. You know how the old saying, how the rich always get richer and the poor get poorer, Holy Writ in Aztlan, the Berkamen, the nasty corpse speak for the unaffiliated workers, are stuck right in the middle of that little equation, struggling like bastards to vault into the upper ranks, all the time praying that they don't slide further down the scale. Your typical Berkaman lives in a council complex, kind of co-op run and partially subsidized by the government. The clean, efficient, totally fragging, soulless places. Like the Castillos, the corporate council complexes try to include all facilities the presidents need. Quality, though, is way downgraded. No flash restaurants. Bookermen eat in commissaries like cafeterias. Same thumbprint deal as the Castillos, by the way. Means no walk-in trade. Not that anybody would want to walk in. Right? Peasants, Shadowrunners, economy, currency, imports and exports, the stock market, cost of living, chips and other brain benders, cyberware, cyberdeck, government politics, government structure. This is one of those settings that I never got an opportunity to really explore very well. Like I said, I was lacking in anybody who really wanted to play Shadowrun back when I was really gung ho for it. And then a couple times I managed to play off and on over the decades. I didn't have access to a lot of the material that I'm currently reviewing, or it just didn't pan out. And this would have been one I would have loved to have done some exploration into because there's a lot of potential here. It is not your Seattle subplex by any means. So the real risks would be much greater, I think, here. And depending on if you're an outsider coming in to do something, or if you're local, local trying to get involved with the local stuff. On the other hand, there was a lot of political neo stuff going on in this book. Well, I wasn't 100% comfortable with either, and I wasn't going to go out of my way to Shanghai people into playing into this campaign unless everybody was on board with just how potentially south this thing could go. Uh, morals would be challenged, I think, and it would take an agreement because if you got players who are used to playing with the rules like you find them in Seattle, coming into an environment like this would be totally new, a big learning curve for everybody, including the players. In my opinion, talk about music, professional sports, football, local talent, major players, organized crime, places of interest, hotels. And yeah, they got that one here where they play it's like a form of wall soccer or whatever you call it, and the winning side ends up getting sacrificed. They claim they don't do that, but there's some suggestions in here that may be suggest that sometimes they do, depending on what they're trying to, what kind of magical mojo stuff they're trying to pull. So we get various hotels, nightclubs, other, Aztechnology pyramids, corporate headquarters. Game information, Aztlaner music, air magic, Yeah, very beginning paragraph. Following section contains rules for game master information pertaining to specific subjects discussed earlier in this book. Game masters should note the rules for blood magic and conjuring blood spirits only to non-player characters. No player character can ever become a blood mage or conjure blood spirits. Only the villains may face, if they're spectacularly unlucky, can do such things. Game masters should be sparring with such villains. Users of blood magic are incredibly powerful, and player characters should not have to deal with them very often. But it's very specific. This sort of stuff is not right kosher. And then once again, they reinforce it again here. Blood magic, the so-called path of blood, excuse me, is a unique category of meta magic practice only within Aztlan and relatively few high-grade initiates. So it comes down here. As of 2055, only a handful of Aztlaner initiatory groups, possibly the various orders of warriors, and certainly a magical group within the priesthood, know, teach, and practice the path of blood. No player character can ever learn how to practice the blood magic. The rules pertaining to it are only for non-player characters and only. Game Master needs to take great care in staging the use of blood magic. Practitioners of this art are demonstrating a complete contempt for life and their victims, and the use of blood magic should be presented in a correspondingly shocking way that it creates a great deal of bloodshed. What they're saying is your players should not be allowed to get used to, bloodletting people to power up their magic. It's a bad idea. And it can lead to bad stuff, which is why I said if you're going to have a group of players that are into that sort of thing, you really have to set the groundwork early on, in my opinion, just to be safe. Got some new equipment. The Medicaro, or Aztlan's equivalent of dock wagon, Jaguar Guard, Leopard Guard, Security Guard, Border Agent. Effects of life in Tenochtitlan and decreased tolerance. Newcomers to Tenochtitlan to resist disease and toxins slightly less than their actual body attribute increased rain, air pollution, acid rain on the extreme side. All right. And we have here, we have a little map of Tenochtitlan, or formerly Mexico City, because that's what it is. All right. Nice little map that stayed intact in the book because, like I said, they never had an opportunity to get a player group to go play in this setting. And this book in 1995 was $18. Yeah, 1995. It's still in really good shape too. Once again, because this is probably only the third time I've read it in the years I've had it. What you doing, Mama? You can't climb up there. Don't give you ideas. You don't need to be climbing up there. Anyway, I'm me. You're you. Mama's coming back over here.